Today's sutta comes to us from the numerical discourses. And it is from the book of Tens. And there's 11 books in the Anguttara Nikāya, in the numerical discourses. So this sutta that we'll be covering today, it's not a long sutta. It's quite brief, but it is so packed with so much Dhamma. And it might be deceptively simple looking or sounding, but it is not. It is very deep because it puts the whole Dhamma, the Lord Buddha's teachings, into one very simple mnemonic device, easy to remember structure. And as I mentioned in the past, how the book of the 10 in this case, but the numerical discourses, each of these books, they go up by a factor of 1. That's in Pali, it's called Anga. Anguttara means by a factor of 1. It's going up. So from 1 all the way to 11 books. But in this case, Lord Buddha is going to be talking about 10 different things. Now, within the numerical discourses, there's 2 other specific suttas that also has pretty much the same structure. One of them we get in the book of the 8s, and then the other one we get in the book of the 9s. And the book of the 8s has 2 less things, basically, that today's sutta has. So today's would have 2 additional ones. And then the other one, in the from the book of the 9s, we see Venerable Sariputta asking a series of questions. So basically, it is a Q&A, formula. When this, what is this? Kim, for example, in the book of the 8s, it's called Kim Mūlaka. Kim means what, or what is. Mūlaka means, Mūla means root. What is the root of all things? Kim Mūlaka. And, or in some cases, it's called Attaka Mūlaka Sutta. That would be the book of the 8th version of it. So in today's would be Bhagavā Mūlaka, because it was addressed. The answers are provided by none other than Lord Buddha himself. And unlike the one that we get in the Navaka Samidhi Sutta, which is from the book of the 9s, I was saying, so it has 9 questions. There we have Venerable Sariputta asking questions from his student Samidhi, whom we have met in the past, from Samidhi Sutta. The organizers of the canon of specifically the first council, the Arahants, they saw such tremendous value in including these 3 suttas within the Anguttara Nikāya. And Anguttara Nikāya itself was highly influenced by or supervised by Venerable Anuruddha during the first council. Sometimes people say, scholars have said that it was, you can feel Venerable Anuruddha's touch in the suttas. Of course, that's not the only Nikāya. We also have a special section of the Samyutta Nikāya, the connected discourses, where we have an entire series of suttas dedicated to Venerable Anuruddha as well. But they say that he was the supervisor, in a sense, or the questioner of Venerable Ananda when he was reciting the Anguttara Nikāya suttas. So something to know in the back of the mind when you're exploring suttas. So this one is the AN 1058. So Anguttara Nikāya, Sutta number Anguttara Nikāya 10.58. So it's the 58th Sutta from the Book of the Tens. Bhagavā Mūlaka Sutta. In this case, it's not Kim Mūlaka, like or Attaka Mūlaka, which would be the root of all things. In this case, because it's Bhagavā Mūlaka Sutta, we translate it as rooted in the Blessed One. Some might translate it differently, but that's how I translated it. The Blessed One, because he is the questioner and the one who provides the answers to this. So we're going to see how Lord Buddha is asking the bhikkhus and is kind of giving them a heads up by saying, if those wandering ascetics, recluses of other sects, were to ask you these questions, what would your answers be? He's not tricking them. He's not, doing anything of the sort, but he's trying to give them the necessary, responses, and also to augment their own practice, to have them understand as to why is it that they're in the holy path. What is holy life like? What is it all about? I mean, they're in robes. What are they really doing? Do they know the structure? Oftentimes, I mention to students how you, living in the 21st century, having so much exposure to the Dhamma, are far more resourceful when it comes to, having access to so much Dhamma. In those days, people probably had 1 or 2 verses to go by, to become an arahant with. Many of you know so many suttas, or have heard about them at least. So many monks didn't have that luxury. But whatever they had, they would just lock on that and really probe it. I say this because oftentimes students might be under the delusion that I need to have more suttas. I need to know more theories, more concepts, more teachings from the Dhamma in order for me to kind of get more tools in my toolbox to attain peace, attain tranquility and understanding. That is not the case, always. Having said that, in the sutta, we're going to see Lord Buddha going to the nuts and bolts of the Dhamma, if you will. And he's giving just sound bites, one after the other, so that the monks would know how to respond to ascetics of other sects. So, the ascetics, wandering ascetics of other sects, they were in the, as they were then, they are still today, not just in Asia, but also in the West, philosophers and whatnot. They used to dabble a lot with, and they still do, with speculations about the world. So philosophically, it's very enticing to engage in certain questions. Ontologically, like what is the nature of existence, of being? So here, we're going to see how Lord Buddha pulls it out of just speculatory explanation or explorations and put it back into the lap of the practitioner. So there's nothing speculative about it. Now, what many people, many commentators, Buddhist commentators have done with this sutta, and this and the other 2 suttas that I mentioned, Attaka Kim Mūlaka Sutta, and Navaka Mūlaka Sutta, and this one, Bhagavā Mūlaka, they treated it as Lord Buddha simply placing, the wholesome and the unwholesome, talking about simply the wholesome and the wholesome, unwholesome and the wholesome. That's not it only. That would be, as Bhante Nyanananda would say, a major underestimation of the power of the sutta, or these three suttas. Because here we see Lord Buddha, at least in this one, how he goes into the bare fundamental principles, leaving out the wholesome and the unwholesome, just the mechanics of what is it at the core of this thing called one's own spiritual practice, religious practice. He's listing them one after the other in the form of Q&A. But without further ado, let us just jump in. So this is one of those suttas where you don't see, evam me suttam, like the one that you've heard me say so many times at the beginning of suttas. This is what I personally heard. In this case, you see just straight away Lord Buddha jumps into the delivery, or whoever is recounting it, he just goes and is speaking out, uttering the words of Lord Buddha. So he says, Bhikkhus, if wandering ascetics of other sects were to ask you, friends, what is the root of all things? How are all things born? Where do all things arise from? Where do all things converge and come together? What are all things headed by? What dominates and exercises authority over all things? What is the noblest thing that surmounts all things? What is the essence of all things? What is the culmination of all things, where they all merge? Where do all things terminate and find their conclusion? So we have 10 key questions. And in those days, India, as it is today, and unfortunately, after several centuries after Lord Buddha died, inevitably the Buddhist, the Sangha, starting with what we call today as Theravada, and then later on Mahayana, and then Vajrayana, they just went into speculation land. Laziness, not practice, and just delved into more and more philosophical, useless endeavors, while they got stuck in the mud of samsara, but with stronger and bigger egos and concepts, of course. But here we're going to see how Lord Buddha just is asking questions that we can tell were also being, people were going back and forth within these different wandering ascetic sects. And many times, we don't know this, but probably commentators will say yes or no. But the Buddha had also heard these statements, these questions being addressed to him. Again, these are all speculative, at least the first few of them. So, and then Lord Buddha goes ahead and continues. If you were to be asked about these questions that require your explanation, what would be your responses to them? And, the bhikkhu is like, if Lord Buddha is asking you that question, you don't want to risk it, especially because you would be also wasting a very valuable opportunity. Because when Lord Buddha would ask such a question, if you say, Bhante, I don't know, then he's going to go ahead and elaborate it for you. There you go. By you saying, I don't know, Bhante, could you please elaborate? You just allow Dhamma to be available for posterity. And what a generous act you just committed. It's a wonderful thing. So here we go, and we hear what the Sangha is saying. Bhante, the Blessed One, is the origin of the Dhamma. Our understanding of the teachings is rooted in the Blessed One, for he is our refuge. Now, it would be wonderful if the Blessed One would clarify the meaning of these questions by providing us with their appropriate answers. In that way, the bhikkhus, on hearing it from the Blessed One, will learn and carry it in their hearts. And that's why we call it Bhagavā Mūlaka, rooted in the Blessed One. And so Lord Buddha then says, in that case, bhikkhus, listen and attend carefully. I shall now speak. Yes, Lord, the bhikkhus responded. Bhikkhus, if wandering ascetics of other sects were to ask you, so here we see again the repetition of the sutta, of the questions. And these are also mnemonic devices for those early monks who were the reciters of the sutta, meaning the ones who remembered the library of the Dhamma, if you will. That's how we ended up getting these suttas through the centuries, at least the first 5 to 6 centuries of the Sasana's life, where nothing was written down. So by the repetition of the question, the reciter would remind himself. And then you didn't have just one reciter. Usually you would have several reciters. So whoever misses one phrase, the other one would jump in and continue. When in my travels, sometimes at least in the earlier days after my ordination, I would be in different temples or monasteries, and the bhikkhus would start chanting something, and then someone would just catch a breath, or miss out a word or a few words. I mean, it does happen. The sentence. The other bhikkhus who were chanting, they would cover up, they will join in, and then it's kind of nice, actually. So the other ones would be carrying over, and then the other one just comes and joins. So it's nice. So having these repeat is quite useful. So, friends, what is the root of all things? How are all things born? Where do all things arise from? Where do all things converge and come together? What are all things headed by? What dominates and exercises authority over all things? What is the noblest thing that surmounts all things? What is the essence of all things? What is the culmination of all things? Where they all things, where they all merge? Where do all things terminate and find their conclusion? Then you should answer those wandering ascetics of other sects in the following manner. Well, the first one is, rooted in desire are all things. That's the only explanation. That it's just boom, very brief, as you see, simple. Deceptively simple of a response he's giving. He doesn't say good or bad desire. This is where a lot of people get it wrong when they're trying to criticize or explain Buddhism or some of its principles, especially in the context of, in this case, desire. Many people think desire is bad. Oh, you Buddhists don't want desire. Buddha never taught for people to have desire. He wanted you to completely get rid of desire. That is not true. That is not true, because we just see how rooted in all things. So it's a very neutral statement. He doesn't say wholesome or unwholesome. He doesn't say rooted in all things rooted in desire are all bad things. He's giving us the very basic, the fundamental, bare, and completely, straight out of the shelf. Basically, it's ready to be used as necessary. So now we're just getting desire. In Pali, the term is chanda. Chanda. That fervent interest, that fervent desire, the thing that allows, it's like a heat-seeking missile. It follows, it's locked on. The energy that you put into something is completely dictated by how much interest there is in you for that something. All the energy that you put in, all the patience that you will have, has everything to do with your original hotspot, the thing which drives you, in essence. That is what chanda is. Now, even though I mentioned how in this sutta and the previous other two suttas that I mentioned, from the book of the eights and the nine, we see these very short answers. Yes, but of course, in the suttas, in the Nikāyas, we have countless places where each of these provided answers are fully unfolded, elaborated, clarified, elucidated. Two such Nikāyas, other than the numerical discourses, of course, are the Majjhima Nikāya, middle-length discourses, and the Samyutta Nikāya, where they are really unfolded, uncoiled, opened up. Like in this case, desire is the root of all things. Now, when you go back to the ninth, the book of the nines, where Venerable Sariputta is giving the answer to this question, he's talking about arammana. Arammana is the objects, the things, the basis of things. What are they? He asks to Venerable Samiti. And Venerable Samiti's answer is, mental objects, Bhante, are the root of all things. So I just wanted to delineate the differences between these two, even though I go back and forth between them. And also he goes into nama rupa as the name and form. That's where we get the role, the importance of intentions and one's own thoughts. But when you look at it from afar, just looking at it, you pan out and you observe these different principles. You see they're one and the same ultimately, because they all start from desire, chanda. I remember one time I was giving a talk in Los Angeles. I was still a layman at the time. And someone asked about desire. And he said, you mean to say desire is necessary or is a good thing in the Dhamma? He was surprised. And I said, yes. So he wanted to understand more. So he asked a few more questions. And I said, well, you came here to the temple on a Sunday. How did you get here? Well, I took my car. Okay. How did your day start? Like what happened? Did you have the thought of coming to the temple? He's like, yeah. Okay. There's that desire. Okay. What else did you do? Well, then I had to get ready, this and that, put on my clothes, eventually get down to my car, start the engine, drive off and through the freeways and get to the temple. And then what you do? Park the car, okay, and then walk to the temple. Go into the doors of the temple and come inside and find your own cushion and sit there. And he's like, yeah. And I said, what did you do with the desire? Where's the desire now? The desire to come to the temple. What did you do with it? And like, I dropped it. You can't keep carrying it, can you? It got you to where you wanted. So this is where it is essential for us to understand how desire serves a purpose. Desire serves a purpose. When you go and study something, your life is not going to be just a perpetual, education and not getting somewhere. There needs to be something, a desire to gain wisdom, understanding, expertise, skills. But after you've had it, you don't keep thinking about it. Once you learn how to swim and you become a multi, Olympic gold medalist, You're not reading through books on how to swim. You're done. You've mastered it and you drop it. So what happens is a lot of us will continue holding that desire. The desire itself becomes the goal. And that is something that many people get stuck in. It could be the prestige, the renown, the fame, the honor, the wealth, the recognition, that all that effort is bringing you because of that desire. But all of them will miss the boat, and you along with them. The goal, in this case, the spiritual practice. So, Chanda Mūlaka, we have, so what I'm referring to is Dhamma Chanda. The desire for Dhamma is necessary for you to start the journey in the holy path. That is necessary. But unfortunately, what many of us get stuck in is all the other stuff. And as we go deeper, we're going to see what those other stuff are referring to. So next is, well, before we get to the next, there's several ways we understand also. So I mentioned the Dhamma Chanda, but also there is usually when people talk about desire, we talk about sense objects, sensual or sensory stimulation. And remember, in Buddhism, we have 6 senses. The most subtle, the most deepest and strongest is the mental stimulation, which we don't get to talk about a lot. We usually talk about the visual stimulation or tactile stimulation, sexuality and things like that. But in today's day and age where we are bombarded with all kinds of input and sensory stimulation, the desire is constantly leading to more desire. Variety, variety, variety. If you ever scroll through your phone, that's perfect example of chanda. You're going through so many times. You're scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. You don't like, okay, move. You don't like, okay, swipe to the left or right. I don't know which one is what. So basically, you're just getting more stimulation. So in this case, as far as the Dhamma is concerned, we're talking about getting the enthusiasm to act. You see a problem, you see some addiction you have, you see that you're not getting anywhere in your practice. That brings up this strong fervency in you to check what you're doing wrong. The simple example is when you're sitting to meditate and something happens and all of a sudden 10 minutes you're already distracted or gone to somewhere else in visualization or some other story. Restlessness, and then you complain that you're not a good meditator. Well, all these things are happening because the desire is not strong enough, or at least on the right thing, because you're putting in more and more and more vidya, more and more energy, but the desire is weak. That's the problem. So you're sitting there, as they say, spinning your wheels in the air. So what do? You need to get the wheel to touch some strong, friction-causing environment. And that has to be involving the sense of urgency in your practice. So you always have the right, you always must give yourself the audacity to go ahead and say, okay, what am I doing wrong? So if all else fails, just go back to the chanda, go back to the beginning. Do I have the necessary enthusiasm? Am I locked on the right target? Because if you continue, you're going to hit the wrong target. That's why many people start on the holy path or religious practice, and they land in the wrong thing, meaning they are lost in the desire for more wealth, more recognition, more conceptual junk to be gathered in their mind, having nothing to do with the Dhamma. So the chanda has to be well placed. Otherwise, we're completely off target. So once you have chanda, the second comes in. The second question is Lord Buddha is going to answer. All things are born through attention. Attention. Again, this is not, he's saying is bare bones, right? What is it? What is the next step? Attention. This is not wrong attention or right attention, like yoniso manasikara and ayoniso manasikara. He's just talking about the attention that is necessary. So now we know what to do with it. When we understand that life begins when we give something attention, then things start to make some sense. We only experience what we give attention to. Please put that in the background. Let that echo in your mind, especially when you're in a difficult situation in life. Whatever we're experiencing is due to attention, the attention that we're giving. And if you don't give attention to something, you are untouchable by that very thing. Remember, last week we were talking about the elements, when we were talking especially in reference to the six senses, and we saw how a person, even a person, if they have a functioning good eye, which is the internal organ, the eye organ, and then you have an actual visible object, and you have the conditions, the right conditions, you have light, etc. But so long as the person is not given attention to it, they still cannot see it. So here we see the value of giving attention to something. Perfect example is if there's somebody who's tapping on something, in the middle of the night, or a buzzing sound. If you put your focus on that, you will not be able to fall asleep. Why? Because you are so top heavy in your attention on that thing. You're focused on it. It's like attention is, in other words, a magnifying glass that brings out, puts more and more focus on the thing. In this case, whatever the chanda is. So now we're seeing how attention and chanda are very much related to one another, because attention is always pulling us to the sense object, always pulling us in, always pulling us in. Why? Because it pulls us into the thing that we want to cling to. And now you see also the connection between that, the attention and chanda, the desire. This is why so many people cannot shrug off, cannot shake off the sluggish, the feeling stuck, not being able to move out of their sludge, the mire of the status quo that they're in, because they don't know what else to do, because they're not looking at the right thing. You need to go back and check the chanda. What am I really interested in? Why am I even sitting? This is what a lot of people cannot answer when I ask them. Why do you sit to meditate? Even, veteran, as we call it, meditators who have been meditating for a while, they're stuck. But they've stopped asking the right question as to why am I sitting in the first place? Because they might have started with the right intention, but that was years ago. Over time, they have been pulled in this direction, that direction, and they have lost focus. That's why we need to check where the desire is, where the interest or enthusiasm is, or whether it's there in the first place. That's why Lord Buddha always would emphasize the urgency, samvega, and he would normally use that in connection to death. Because nothing shakes you into reality than death. Brings the focus back to where it's supposed to be. And that's why when we have attention or manasikara, it cannot stay just attention. If we are treading on this path, sooner or later, we need to understand that it has to be placed on the point of origin. And that's why it's called radically placing the attention on the point of origin, yoniso manasikara. That's why it's also called wise attention. You're looking at what matters, what really matters to you. So you're not going by the drive of that moment, by the sankharas, by whatever habitually you're used to, accustomed to doing or thinking, because it can easily take over. Your sankharas, you don't want your meditation to be led by your sankharas. You don't, otherwise you're going to be led off the reservation, and that is what's happening 99% of the time with meditators in the world. Whoever's claiming to be practicing the Dhamma, monks or not, 99% of us are not practicing correctly. And that's a big statement. Because people have stopped asking the right question. Why am I doing this? What is the objective? Where is my attention? That's the second question. That's why Lord Buddha is asking these 10 questions. These 10 questions are not simply the questions of wandering paribhajakas or wandering ascetics of other sects. This is Lord Buddha's also effort at bringing us, knocking some sense into our heads, the dense skulls of ours, to practice properly. Because no one's going to pull us out of samsara. He's done his job. I mean, he's done his mission is over. He showed us the Dhamma. Otherwise, death is always there around the corner, and you will die. What do you do before that? Where is your attention? It has to be placed on the right, at that right radical moment when it happened. And what is that? That's contact, which is the next thing that Lord Buddha answers. All things arise from contact. Remember, you've heard me say it many times. That phone call you got triggered something. That was a contact. You heard someone's voice, which you hadn't heard for a long time. And all of a sudden, you're completely frazzled. You're completely thrown in a spin like a tornado, sucked into a tornado. What happened? I was fine. I was not agitated. What happened? Contact. That's a very obvious example, of course, but during the day, we have thousands of contacts being made, pulling our attention. So contact or Bhagavā Mūlaka, it's grounded, it's rooted in contact. That's the place of origin where the attention has to be placed. So it is arisen, samudaya, from Phassa. It's also the point of touch, if you will. Phassa also means touch. Phassa. Putto bhikkave vedeti, the suttas say. Bhikkhus, putto, through touch, through contact, one feels. Putto sanjanati. Because of contact, one perceives. And because of contact, one intends. Putto ceteti. Volitionally intends. Because of contact. And this is another reason why I always emphasize the importance of having goals. You need to set the goals for yourself in the morning when you're being appreciative of life, of yourself. You have knees, you have feet, you have your heart is beating, you're alive, you get eyesight. That's contact. So you're using contact in the right way. You're putting the focus on where it needs to be so you can actually navigate through this difficult thing called life. Point of touch. Now, what needs to be on that point of touch? Attention has to be. Now, that means you need to be pretty fast to catch these points of contact. They're happening all the time. Bhante Nyanananda in the book, also in the Dependent Origination series of sermons he's given, he mentions the beautiful example. He draws this scene for us. He says, imagine a table tennis game. Ping pong. Ping, 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 going back and forth. And he says, imagine yourself being on one side, and your opponent happens to be none other than Mara himself. Ooh, and you got a racket, he's got a racket. And the whole racket, pun intended here, of Mara is to fool you. And every time he throws the ball, he serves the ball, he's throwing a contact at you, a new contact. It could be a contact by the voice, represented by the voice of your neighbor, a boss who's annoying, who's unappreciative, a colleague, situations, your body, the weather, the politics. All of these things are different contacts. Now, what is the tendency of a common person? We get immediately sucked into the story. What? The story, the contact? No, we forget about the contact. We're sucked in. It's like pulls us in. It's like the abyss of the story. And then we're like, yeah. This is it. This is why I'm upset. This is why I'm angry. This is, even in therapy sessions, especially in therapy sessions, I would like try to listen and then pull away and say, narrow it down. And then we say, do you see this? These are just contents. This is just a story. I need you to pull back and look at the pattern here. But we love stories. We love stories. And the deluded mind is a story-making machine to begin with. So we don't bother about contact. We think it's not important. Meanwhile, it is the spark that starts a wildfire in the dry forest. So when Mara hits you with that ball, as Bhante Nyanananda says, your job is to quickly respond. How though? Yoniso manasikara. At that moment of contact, you see it, your eyes on the ball. You're not fooled by what he's doing with his other arm, with his body, this and that, all the faces he's making. It's not important. Your job is to respond by hitting back with your attention, the ball back to him. And suddenly you caught that point of touch. So that phone call is not going to upset you because you saw it. And that's why sati is so important. And the more you have of these moments during the day, the more wisdom you are cultivating. Wisdom doesn't come from someone else to you. You don't buy it at Costco or at a wholesale store. You develop it with every single moment of yoniso manasikara, with sati. Now, we talked about contact. What comes next? Lord Buddha says, all things converge and come together in feelings. You know, there was a song like Feelings in the 70s, I think. Nothing more than feelings, right? We experience life through feelings. In essence, feelings is the apex of life as far as we're concerned. How we feel. Ask any multi-billionaire. Ask any person who's struggling to live why they're pursuing what they're pursuing. Athletes, this, that. What is it they want? After they've talked about the big house, the big this, the large this, the wealth, this, that, eventually when you bring it down, all that has to equate with so that I feel happy, so that I feel pleasure, so that I don't feel at least pain. What? Feel. Feeling. They all come, imagine, 2,600 years ago, Lord Buddha knew this. That's the driving force. We don't want to feel pain. We want to feel pleasure, okay? And many of us are embarrassed to say it. So that's why we construct all these stories. But the nuts and bolts of it is, I don't want to feel pain. I want to feel joy and pleasure, okay? That's what I want. So feelings are what we are fixated on. It is the ultimate showstopper for us, feelings. In essence, we are motivated by feelings. Look at any ad, listen to any ad, advertisement. What are they selling? Hey, if you don't buy this, then you're going to end up being like that. You're never going to enjoy that. Oh, that. You see that? And they would use examples. Oh, look at these people, you know, they're together, or this or that. Look at that family. Look at this. Look at what they're enjoying. And while you're sitting there, what are they saying? You don't have what they have. If you have what they have, you will have pleasure. You will have happiness. That's basically the basic, fundamental driving force for anything that human endeavors are involved in. One would say, oh, it's propaganda, or it's capitalist, or postmodernist capitalist, or neo capitalist, or something like that. But you see this also in communism. You see it everywhere. Marxism, any ism out there. Because people respond very quickly, mind you, to how you make them feel. And if you've ever gone into sales or read anything about how to sell, people don't buy the object. People don't buy the thing. Consumers don't buy the thing that you're selling them. You are selling them the feeling of good, the feeling of feeling, the emotion of feeling happy. That's what they're buying. That's why when you buy that big screen TV, you put it in your car and you're driving away. You think it's the biggest screen TV on the planet. It's right next to you in the car. You're driving away and you stop at a red light and you look over. There's a big billboard that says, oh, there's one that is 2 inches more that just hit the market. What happens to that big screen TV that's sitting next to you that you're going to end up paying for 36 months to pay off? You lost. What happened? Greed comes in. What is greed based on? What are they selling you? These commercials, these advertisements, the feeling of pleasure, the promise of it. The quintessential carrot on a stick, the donkey going after that. That's who we are. Now you can add anything you want to that image, or it's not a big screen TV, it could be anything. Without understanding what this holy path is, you might even turn Nibbāna into something like that. Many people have. Oh, I'm going to attain this state. Oh, I'm going to attain jhana. Why? What is the objective of attaining Nibbāna? So that you can tell people about it? The first rule is you never tell anyone. There's no need. You're beyond it. So all things converge and come together in feelings. And what comes after that? Headed by concentration are all things. Headed by concentration are all things. Now, again, this is just concentration. Lord Buddha is not talking about Samma Samadhi from the Noble Eightfold Path, mind you. He's just pointing these things out, unlike what the commentaries have turned this sutta into. This is not about wholesome and unwholesome qualities. He's giving you the skeleton of how this life works in connection to the pursuit of the holy life. What you need to first understand, the skeleton, and then you flesh it out. So, in essence, then, when we look at headed by all things is concentration, we are essentially talking about the wrong kind of concentration in this case, because everybody's concentrated. You go and ask Elon Musk about something, and you can see him. He can't even sit still. He's restless. You go in to speak to a politician, you ask them a very pertinent question. Their eyes start moving around. Their heart rate is racing. They're trying to figure out how to avoid the question. And they're very good at it. That's why they're that politician, the senator, congressman, leader of a country, businessman, avoiding. Well, that is going to act, but they have to be focused on something. That is concentration. Where is your focus? If you're working with a cheater, let's say, someone who cheats on their husband, their wife, their partner, a business partner, it's very hard to get them to come out of that concentrated state of mind. And their concentration is very strong. It's like, I usually give you the example of somebody who's a thief, who's trying to crack open a safe. They're so concentrated. Lord Buddha, there's a sutta from the Anguttara Nikāya. I think it's in the book of the 5s or 4s. He says I think it might be the 4s. He says there's 4 types of people who can't sleep at night. One is the king, who's always worried about whether his borders, or ruler, whether his borders are protected, whether his city is safe, whether his people are, obviously conscientious leader, we don't have them anymore, whether his public is sleeping hungry, or are they well fed, they're protected, etc. And then there is, he says, the farmer, who's thinking whether they need to plant this way, that way, and whether they have enough seeds for, to cultivate the land with. And then he says, and then there is the thief, the robber, the burglar, or politician, who's trying to figure out how to scam people out of their money, how to crack open that bank, that safe, that public fund, for him to go and steal money. His focus is on that. And if you were keeping track, the 4th one is the bhikkhu, the meditating bhikkhu, who is spending the time awake when everyone is asleep, trying to crack open samsara and release oneself from it. Those are the 4 types of people, Lord Buddha says, who can't sleep at night. So the focus is on what? That's the key. The concentration is on what? So, and then we get to the next one, the next question, which is answered in this way. Lord Buddha answers it. by saying, mindfulness is what dominates them all, for it exercises authority over all things. So mindfulness, obviously, it is very much conjoined with attention, of course. But remember, these are not separate things from one another. They build on each other. If you notice, what was the first thing? Desire, chanda. If the desire is wrong, the whole thing falls apart. The whole thing falls apart. That's why many people, let's say, in economic sense, financial sense, they reach their goals. And you go and ask them, and they have no idea what they struggled for. Over the years, I used to have patients or clients in the past who would come, and for all intents and purposes, they have everything that one may want. Youth, money, and at the height of societal, the highest echelon of society, whether they were attorneys or doctors, medical doctors, healthy, active, athletic, but they were there in the therapy room, desperate for answers. People would come and say, I owe nobody any money. All my debts are paid off. They're barely 30 years old, by the way. They have law degrees, passed the bar, or GPs. People look at them and they're like wowed by them. Physical attractiveness, but they are miserable, chronically depressed, as people say in the field. That should say something about where the attention is placed, or misplaced in this case. So I'm putting these examples in front of you so you can also try to see if you fall into any of these categories, or at least what is it that you're hoping for that's going to give you happiness. I've met people who have the perfect partner, so to speak, perfect family, perfect number of family members, the place where they live, the house, the career, the body, but no happiness. So next time you look in the mirror and you're asking, how come I don't have that? If I were to have that, then I will be happy. I won't be miserable. Really? Really? All these people who have those things that you don't have, how come they're not blissed out? Like the people I just mentioned, like, Elon Musk and others, these politicians, these wealthy people, they're not happy, they're miserable. Many of them have had several marriages, divorces, affairs. They're not happy. They can't even sit down and speak with their own children properly. They don't get the respect of their children, which is even worse. So we need to see, where is our attention being placed? In this case, whether I have mindfulness when I'm speaking, when I'm expressing my thoughts, when I'm telling you about what animates me about life, and whether what I'm saying is something that I truly believe in. You can start from there. And again, mindfulness needs to be yoniso manasikara, meaning placed at the point of origin. Wise, radical attention. That's what mindfulness here is, that Lord Buddha is encouraging the bhikkhus to inculcate, bring up in them. And then the next one is, the answer is, all things come to be surmounted by wisdom, the noblest in all things. Wisdom, not information. An AI will never be wise because it's simply the product of algorithms that were inputted by human beings. ChatGPT, if you go ahead, and that's the big thing now, right, in the world, you can give it some information, and one of my students was saying, Bhante, you can just give it some prompts, and voila, it can spit out the best article, the best legal letter, the best paper, the best essay. That's only one simple, small segment of what it is capable of, by the way. But it will never be able to produce wisdom. It's just relying on information, data. Remember, the more you have your attention on the contacts that are arising, the better choices you will start to make, which indicates the increase in your level of wisdom. And the more you have those, then you won't be experiencing suffering as much. Why? Because you will take your time. Not reacting to situations, but responding to situations. And as you do so, you won't be falling into the same traps that you used to. Why? Because you have a clearer vision. And that's another definition for wisdom. You see things clearly. You're not fooled. A wise person is not a fool. The opposite of foolish is wisdom. But it's not going to, again, fall into your lap. It takes you getting involved by hitting back with your tennis racket. Every time Mara hits you with a serve, with a ball, a ping pong ball, which we called contact, which Bhante called contact, which is a brilliant example. And then it becomes a matter of how quick can your response time be? And when I say response time, I mean, can you see it at the point of arising of that contact? When you burn your hand, instead of going and screaming, cursing at it, watch the mind getting so fast, loaded up and about to attack. Just observe it. Just observe it. That's all. Don't say this is bad. I shouldn't be. Bhante doesn't want. No. Just observe that point of contact. That's all. The next time it's going to get easier. And suddenly it's going to become almost like you're seeing it all happen in slow motion, but it is not. It's pretty quick, but you have become quicker. And this way you can actually, because of wisdom, you're taking ownership of your life. So you're no longer the victim of your sankharas or habitual tendencies or your circumstances. You're not. Including your hopes and expectations. You're not. You're the owner of your life. And that, okay, so now we're talking about real freedom here. It has nothing to do with gaining things, getting things, obtaining things, or getting rid of things. It has everything to do with you being alert. See, we often minimize the importance of alertness. Venerable Anuruddha was questioned again and again and again by people as to how he attained Nibbāna, how he became an arahant. His answer was very simple. He said, I just paid attention to what? The body. The four postures: sitting, standing, lying down, walking. I had both sati and sampajanya. I was fully alert. I was always there. Yeah, you will slip every once in a while. That's okay. You bring it back. Something as simple as touching, holding, lifting, and bringing the cup to your lips. Putting it back. That could be your doorway to Nibbāna. never to be minimized. These simple things, and we do them countless times during the day. Next, we get to the other answer, the follow-up. The yielding of true release is the essence of all things. Phala vimutti, in other words, which is the fruit of liberation. Nibbāna is the essence in all things. Release from what? Liberation from what? Most people don't know how to answer that. But it's quite simple, really. You just have to look at the disconcerting, the uncomfortable state that you're in. And if you call that, simplify that by giving it the character of suffering, then Nibbāna is simply the absence of that suffering. No more suffering. Can you visualize yourself not suffering? Is there a place in your mind, in your heart, to embrace that image? Many of us have a hard time to even visualize. That's why people are stuck. What does it look like being happy? When I would ask them, or being successful, even something mundane, people would struggle. They don't see themselves because they've been telling themselves the old story. I am simply not the person that could ever experience happiness. They will not say it, but the stories they tell themselves is all about that. I will never find love. Why? Yeah, if you keep looking outside, you're not going to find it. How am I going to expect love to come from this total stranger out there walking on this planet? If I can't give it to myself, if I cannot allow it to grow within me. When I'm eating a sandwich, I need to experience love. What are you talking about? I have to experience when I'm drinking that cold, juicy orange juice, whatever it is, and the body that's warm, all of a sudden I'm feeling it. It's like there needs to be some metta there. That orange juice was a seed. Before that, it was a flower on a tree. Somebody watered it. Nature gave it all this sustenance. Somebody actually planted it, or the birds did. And all that time it took. Now I have it and I'm squeezing it into my glass. I'm quenching my thirst. Somebody even built a refrigerator to keep it cool. Oh, how many times do we celebrate that? That's love. That's happiness. But we have all this impossible layers of wants and expectations that come in between you and you experiencing the drinking of orange juice with metta and joy. That shouldn't be the case. So an arahant is experiencing that. But they're not even delighting in the whole experience because they're beyond that, as you're going to see in a second. So the essence of all things is true release. Now, when you go to another sutta from the Majjhima Nikāya, middle-length discourses, it's the Heartwood Sutta. And in the Mahasaropama Sutta, Majjhima Nikāya 29, you see how it is the teaching is, well, Lord Buddha is saying how it is not the pursuit or the gain of renown, fame, wealth, praise, recognition that is the essence of the holy life. It is not even the attainment of high level of sila, which is what many, many people are saying these days. Oh, I practice this many precepts or rules. And that's it. There's nothing else to write home about. The personality is just disgusting. There's no consideration of other human beings. When you get them in the right time, you see what they're all made of, because that has become their concentration. Remember what we were talking about? Concentration, what is the focus on? So in the sutta, we see Mahasarupama Sutta, how Lord Buddha is saying, not even that, sila, perfection of sila itself is not the essence of the holy life, which can be shocking to many people. Nor is it its goal or the benefit of the holy life. Neither is attainment of high level of concentration, samadhi. That's not even the ultimate goal and the essence of the holy life. Nor even jnana dassana, knowledge and vision as the goal. Not even that. Then what is? That's a fair question. Akuppa ceto vimutti, the unshakable freedom of the heart, unagitated. Because there will be time where your concentration is not going to be good, because there's been arahants, actually before they became arahants, even, you see them in the suttas where they're very perplexed, these bhikkhus, because as they aged, they were not able to get into the jhanas, or in those high levels of samapatti. They weren't, and they thought that, oh Bhante, I lost it. I lost the jhanas. I lost the wisdom. I have lost it. I am going to fall into the lower realms. There were people legitimately practicing, people who were worried. And Lord Buddha would go and tell them, how is the mind? Oh, they say, Bhante, it's fine. Is it shaken? Is it agitated? No, Bhante. So you can go back to that and still maintain that course without putting all this extra baggage on you. Otherwise, it would be like the elephant who's trying to wear an elephant suit to feel like an elephant. Nonsense. So all these are not the essence. The true release is the unagitated state of mind. Otherwise, outside of Nibbāna, we're going to keep on roaming and wandering in this world called samsara. Because Nibbāna is beyond all things. Beyond all things that we experience, because many times people think Nibbāna is the ultimate experience that I could have in life. That's what they read, that's what they hear. Sometimes, well, a lot of people, bhikkhus, say that. But it's beyond that. It's beyond pleasures. It's beyond concepts. Beyond concepts. Beyond new experiences. It is not the accumulation of concepts or feelings, therefore. Another word for Nibbāna is the asankata, the unconditioned, the unprepared, the unfabricated, the unconstructed. Has nothing to do with habitual patterns or tendencies. But it can only come about through understanding, which we call wisdom. So true release is about the bliss of not being touched by any contacts anymore. You are untouchable by contacts. You see them, of course. You're still living. You're not a machine. You're not a, mannequin, a plastic robot. But you're not touched by them. You're aware, of course, completely, but you're not touched. And Venerable Sariputta calls this avedayita sukha, the unfelt happiness or unfelt bliss. One time, Venerable Sariputta was with the other bhikkhus, and he declared, he said something like, friends, he says, bhikkhus, Nibbāna is the ultimate bliss. Nibbāna is the ultimate bliss. And Venerable Udayi, who was sitting there, who was not an arahant, he always, always somehow got in trouble, and, always was at the wrong place, saying the wrong thing. He just had a shoe in his mouth, I guess. He says, well, what is this bliss that you're talking about, friend? When there's no feeling, how could that be bliss? In his mind, he was equating bliss with feeling. So if Nibbāna doesn't have any feelings, how could it be bliss? And Venerable Sariputta says, exactly, that itself, friend, the fact that there is no feeling is bliss. No being pulled left and right. You see the feeling, of course. When you're tasting the orange juice in the hot weather and it's cool, you're drinking it, you're feeling it, but you're not lost in the delight of that. You're seeing it, you're aware of it. Similarly, when you're hitting your toe against something. Why? Because your mindfulness is so sharp. You are not being had by the experiences of life, by the things that life throws at you. Mara could go ahead and dump on you a whole truckload of ping pong balls. You are not affected. In fact, you put down the racket, you're seeing it. You see every single ball. Next, Lord Buddha says, it is the deathless which all things merge into. The deathless, amata, the deathless. And this is, one can think, oh, well, Bhante, that's why when we had the Bhagavā Mūlaka Sutta, it stops at number 8. But in this sutta, we have 2 more, right? Like I was saying in the beginning. And so in this case, we have the factor or the answer in relation to the deathless. And then we have the next one, which is all things terminate and find their conclusion in Nibbāna. So one would say, well, what is there beyond Nibbāna, Bhante? What is there beyond true release? Well, this is a matter of technicality, but basically in the suttas we have the term saupadisesa nirodha samapatti. What that means is with residues remaining. Residues. The person is now an arahant, but they still have some residual presence of certain things, meaning the 5 aggregates, the pancha upadana, well, pancha khanda, not upadana. But they have to live. They still have a body. They have to speak, they have to formulate words, they have to have, the perception is there to pick up signals from life, to communicate. They're not just going to sit there like a marble statue, collecting dust. But that is their burden. So this term of the deathless is referring to the arahant who is still living, having experienced Nibbāna. But they now are living just, killing time, as it were, doing time rather, because they have residues remaining. Versus the next one where it says, all things terminate and find their conclusion in Nibbāna. In this case, he is referring to anupadisesa nirodha samapatti, meaning, as you might have guessed, no residues remaining. This is the point where, at which the arahant has died. They released all those glues that keep the 5 aggregates working. So, therefore, bhikkhus, if you were to be asked these questions by the wandering ascetics of other sects, then you must answer them in this manner. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So I hope this sutta intrigues you enough so that you can maybe throw another gander, another glance at your practice and look, find if you know, all of us are in there, in our path, in our practice. See if you need tweaking in one area versus the other. From my experience, I can tell you this much, that all of us need to work on the first. Every once in a while, we need to go back to the first, meaning the desire, the chanda, to check and recheck on a daily basis to see what is your interest on, really? What is your fervent interest on? What is the starting point? What is it that the rest of your practice is really targeting? What is your trajectory, if you will? Because I've given the example of using a GPS. If you put in the wrong address, it's not the problem of the computer or the app, the GPS system, to take you to the wrong place if that is what you input into the system. You can start as with a simple statement as, I no longer want to be susceptible to getting angry or becoming hopeless or giving up or feeling overwhelmed as often as I do. That could be something you say to yourself. Okay, then your brain starts to function towards that. Okay, what is it that drives me there? What are the causes and conditions for me to get there then, into that nasty state? And then your mind starts saying, you see over there? You didn't have to say that. You didn't have to pay attention to that person. She's very negative over there. Why do I have to listen to her? She pretends, she feigns interest or she feigns friendship, but I go in and I ended up feeling like I'm in the presence of a vampire. I feel my energy sucked out of me. Well, okay, then whose fault is that? They have to live with themselves. I don't. Okay, let me move away from that. Yeah, but I love being around people. Yeah, but not people like that. Now, what's wrong with my company? Let me spend some time with myself. When was the last time I actually celebrated myself by walking on the grass or taking myself for a gelato? When was the last time I actually sat on a bench, on a park bench, by myself? Really? Without having to scroll through my phone to see what's up with the world. No, just me. Just me. Many of us are uncomfortable with just me. And that's funny, ironic actually, because that's all you have, and that's all you will have in between birth and death, especially in those points. So you might as well get familiar with this me, with this person. Make it a joyful relationship, a partnership, a fun-loving relationship, celebratory one. And then ask yourself, okay, these tendencies are not helping us. The mind is in turmoil, constant. Okay, so let's fix it. How can I be free from the turmoil? Or what does that look like? Well, it will look like peaceful, tranquil, cooled and refreshed. Contentment. I want to feel contented. Santutti in Pali. What a lovely word. But I have to give up things. I have to renounce things. Okay, which one's better for me? I have to take care of myself. Already you're focusing on the right desire. Already you're establishing a very good, point, the hot spot I was saying. What is your trajectory? I want to feel painless. I don't want to feel suffering. That's good. Forget about everything else. Oh, I have to experience Nibbāna. Take it easy. Start from somewhere that is much more close to home, where you don't feel pain as much. Remember, Nibbāna is release from suffering, not the addition of more suffering. Release. So I will stop here and see if there's any questions and comments you might have.
Thanks very much, Bhante. As usual, I have a short one, a very short comment. This sutta reminds me of the first verses of the Dhammapada. Mano pubang gamma dhamma, mano seta, mano maya. Everything starts from the mano, isn't it?
Yes. Mano seta, mano maya. Led by the mind. Mano means the mind, yes. Seta is the leader of the caravan. The caravan will follow. The very last wagon, the very last buffalo or camel is going to follow what the first one is doing. That's where the leader is. Mano maya. Maya, you probably have heard in Sanskrit, in Pali also, it means the illusion, maya. It is created by the magic of the mind. The stuff we tell ourselves. Oh, I can't believe you were not in my life all this time. Where were you all my life? You see this in people, coming together and forming romantic relationships and things, as if their life before never happened. Especially when that person doesn't exist anymore. Something happened and all of a sudden they're no longer there. Oh, I caught him cheating. I caught her cheating. I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, what were you doing before he showed up? Were you breathing? Did you go to the bathroom before he showed up, before she showed up? Did you eat? You see how foolish it is. But the mind makes it look like it is so convincing. The mind is your best friend. That's what the first verse of the Dhammapada, which Upatissa you brought up, the first verse of that, the first set of verses are referring to the mind that is wrongly led by evil thoughts. Just like the cart is pulled by the hoof. It's followed by the hoof or hooves of the ox. Inescapable, like the last camel or bull or buffalo is going to be pulled, following in the same path as the first ones. And then Lord Buddha refers now in the following verses to the mind that is properly led. And the image is wonderful. It's like where he says, just like the shadow that never leaves, a mind that is well placed, well disposed, well directed, wholesome states will follow. And there's an interesting contrast there. A carriage or a cart is a separate entity, separate thing that needs reins and straps and cords and chains and rope or whatever to be attaching themselves to the buffalo, the oxen. So these are two things. But in the second example, in reference to the wholesome thoughts, it's interesting how Lord Buddha uses a different example altogether. It is the body and its shadow. It's immediate, if you notice. The body and the shadow. The shadow never leaves. When I was a kid, I used to try to catch my shadow. I think all kids do that. I used to run fast. I used to, move my hand across, like when the sun's hitting it so that I can beat the shadow, like, I got you. every single time I would fail. It's dependent on what I'm doing, but it is from the one thing. So that's an interesting way of looking, I think, of the image, and the power is there. It's manomaya. Manomaya. What we do with our lives is up, it's a matter of which one is it? The first verse or the second? Do you want to continue being a habitual, as they say, creature of habit? And then you look in the mirror and you're like 60 years old or 80 years old, and the years have gone by and you have just been living your life like that donkey, trying to catch that carrot, which you never will. But what we do as beings, human or otherwise, when that moment of death comes, we'll say, yeah, but next time it's going to get better. I'm going to at least get a big bite out of it. No. That means another life has been wasted altogether. So please use your time, your mind wisely. We must. This is the only life we have, as far as I'm concerned. That's a healthy way of looking, even though in Buddhism we know there's many lives, so long as the person is not broken free from samsara. But we don't have to rely like the Mahayanas and Vajrayanas that they keep doing and being lazy and not doing the work that needs to be done. Now, saving you is number one. That's why Lord Buddha taught for 45 years. He didn't say, I'm giving you all these teachings so that one day in a future life you could become enlightened or free from suffering. Never. Use your time wisely. Be happy. Can you be happy? I was somewhere north of here. I'm in Sydney right now, at 7 hours away, in a place called Bellingen. I was walking with a few of my students, and then suddenly a man came by with Anjali, and he said, Bhante, how are you? And I had never met him. And he was respectful and soft-spoken, and we didn't stop. We kept on walking, and he's following with us. Meanwhile, I'm trying to understand who he is, and he's asking me a bunch of questions, just typical questions, as far as I'm concerned, useless questions. And I said, oh, this is a good question. I said, are you happy? He went like, and he avoided the question. So he kept on asking some other question, where I'm staying, this and that. So I paused and I said, are you happy? And now he was like stalling. You can know. You could see it in his face, and he felt uncomfortable. So I asked him 3 times. He didn't have an answer. He did not have an answer. Most of us don't have an answer to that question. Why is that? Let's have a very clear response to that, at least to ourselves. Ask yourself every day, am I happy? And don't get into the, sucked into the, logic of things and say, well, why not? No. If you're not, make yourself happy. If you're not, period, make yourself happy, exclamation point. It's our responsibility. And that's, again, coming back to the first verses of the Dhammapada. Don't expect someone else to give you that happiness. It's a choice, like I say in the book. Happiness is a choice. Don't be fooled into thinking otherwise. You have placed yourself in the misery you're in. Okay? Even if somebody came and shot your foot off, Okay? Even if you landed in the worst place on the planet at birth. Yes, fine. I had something to do with it. Fine, karmically. But what does that all mean now as far as my happiness is concerned? That is where you have a choice. People have gone through hell in life, in prison camps, concentration camps, in war. Incredibly difficult situations, but they chose not to be sucked into that vortex of suffering and oblivion. They said, no, I'm alive. I'm breathing with some difficulty, but I am alive. That's already, you put one foot in front of the other. Don't worry about, well, how am I going to put the other foot? Your responsibility is putting one foot in front of the other. One. And then you breathe. And then you put another foot in front. Sometimes it's that difficult, but you just have to persevere. But you must make the choice of being happy, becoming happy. And your thinking has everything to do with it. So I'll stop here unless there are questions. Okay, so let us transfer some merits. Akasatha Chabhumata Deva Nagamahidika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakantu Lokasasanam. Akasatha Chabhumata Deva Nagamahidika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakantu Desanam. Akasatha Chabhumata Deva Nagamahidika Punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu mam paranti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May you all be well. May the blessings of the Triple Gem be with you. But all the blessings in all the universes from all the Buddhas of the past and of the future will mean not much if you don't allow your heart to open. And it starts opening if you and when you lift the corners of your lips up by smiling, by forgiving yourself. Please forgive yourselves. Okay? Until next time. Sukhi Hota.